It's one of the most destructive conflicts in history. Fought over land, religion, ideology, empire, power, it led to the deaths of millions, and it changed our world forever. Today, we're going to talk about war. But before we do, I need some help. This channel is my passion project, and I work hard to make videos that are entertaining and educational. The only problem is that YouTube doesn't pay me for doing that. So, if you want to help support this channel and my ability to keep making these videos, then become a patron. You can get access to a weekly podcast, the power to request ideas, and even submit your own voice clips to be featured in videos. To learn more, check out the link in the description below. With that said, let's get into today's video. War is a part of humanity. There have been countless wars throughout human history, from clashes between ancient empires to battles between medieval kingdoms. However, no war has had a greater impact on the modern world than World War I. World War I was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. The war was fought between two main alliances, the Triple Entente, or the Allies, and the Triple Alliance, or the Central Powers. The reasons for the start of the war are complex and interlinked. But to put it simply, it was because of rising nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and a series of unfortunate events. Europe during this time was a powder keg just waiting to explode. And when the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, occurred, it lit the match. Ferdinand had been visiting Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, a region annexed by Austria-Hungary in 1908, which had caused a lot of resentment among the local population. A Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip, member of a group called the Black Hand, assassinated Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the attack and declared war on them. Soon, other European powers were drawn into the conflict. Germany supported Austria unconditionally, while France, Russia, and Britain joined Serbia. Other countries like Italy, Japan, and the United States would later join the conflict. As the war began, there was a sense of optimism that it would be a short and glorious affair. In reality, however, the war turned into a stalemate. The Western Front was characterized by trench warfare with little territorial gain for either side. New weapons such as machine guns, poison gas, and tanks were used, leading to unprecedented levels of death and destruction. The Eastern Front was more fluid, with larger movements of troops and fewer trenches. Battles like Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes resulted in major losses for Russia. As the war dragged on, new technologies and weapons were developed. Machine guns provided covering fire and made frontal assaults nearly impossible. Poison gas was first used by Germany and was a terrifying new weapon. Tanks were invented by Britain and were first used in battle at the Battle of the Somme. Airplanes were used for reconnaissance and eventually for dogfighting. Submarines, or U-boats, were used by Germany to try and cut off supplies to Britain. And of course, there were the massive battles. Battles like the Marne and Verdun were fought with hundreds of thousands of casualties. The Battle of the Somme involved over 1 million casualties. These battles were characterized by frontal assaults, artillery barrages, and waves of soldiers charging across open terrain into machine gun fire. The result was a bloody stalemate with minimal gains. While the Western Front saw brutal but mostly static battles, the Eastern Front was more dynamic. Germany and Austria fought against Russia and the rest of the Triple Entente. Russia wanted to capture East Prussia, which was important for its warm water port. At the Battle of Tannenberg, Germany crushed the Russian Second Army under General Samson. Despite heavy casualties, German forces captured large amounts of territory. Russia was shaken by the defeat, but they regrouped and attacked again. At the Masurian Lakes, Russia again faced German forces under General von Hindenburg. Once again, the Russians suffered a crushing defeat. Hindenburg became a national hero in Germany, and the victory bolstered German morale. These defeats hurt Russia deeply, and they realized they couldn't win without their ally, France. In 1916, the French took over command of the Russian armies, and together they launched an offensive. The Brusilov Offensive was a major operation aimed at capturing Austria and Galicia. Although the attack was successful, it did not achieve its objectives. Russia was badly mauled and had suffered significant casualties. As the war continued, both sides began to rely on new weapons like tanks and poison gas. The British introduced the tank to combat at the Battle of the Somme. While not a decisive victory, the tank proved to be an effective weapon. On the Eastern Front, the war was brutal and mobile, involving massive armies. With less trench warfare, battles like Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes were notable for their large-scale attacks and heavy casualties. The introduction of tanks and poison gas added a new dimension to the war. As the war entered its final year, the strain on resources and manpower was immense. Germany implemented the unrestricted submarine warfare policy to try and starve Britain into This would bring the United States into the conflict. In 1917, the U.S. declared war on Germany due to the sinking of the Lusitania and other merchant ships carrying Americans. American involvement tipped the balance of power. Fresh troops arrived in Europe and helped keep the British in the fight. In 1918, the Western Front saw a major German offensive, but it failed. The Allies counterattacked and pushed the Germans back. By October, the Germans were in full retreat. The war was effectively over. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed, ending the war. World War I was one of the deadliest conflicts in history, with an estimated 15 to 22 million fatalities. The war led to the collapse of empires, major political changes, and significant technological advancements. It also had a profound impact on the world economy and the course of the 20th century. Here are some of the key impacts of World War I. The war led to the collapse of four major empires: the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires. This resulted in the creation of new nations and the redrawing of the map of Europe. For example, Austria-Hungary was broken up into several smaller states, including Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and parts of Italy and Romania. One of the most significant impacts of the war was the emergence of the United States as a major world power. Before the war, the U.S. had been relatively isolated from European affairs. But after the war, the U.S. emerged as a key player on the world stage. This was due, in part, to the U.S. sending troops to fight in Europe. But it was also due to the fact that the U.S. economy had boomed during the war. The U.S. had supplied much of the material to both sides of the conflict and had profited greatly from the trade. The war led to significant changes in technology, including the development of new weapons and military tactics. For example, the war saw the introduction of tanks, poison gas, airplanes, and submarines. These new technologies not only had an impact on the conduct of the war, but also on society as a whole. For example, the development of poison gas led to the creation of gas masks, which were then used by civilians during air raids. The war had a devastating impact on the economies of Europe. The war led to the deaths of millions of people, which in turn led to labor shortages. It also led to the destruction of infrastructure and the loss of trade. This economic turmoil contributed to the rise of extremist political parties in the years following the war. For example, in Germany, the war and the economic crisis that followed led to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. World War I had a profound impact on the course of the 20th century. The war led to the collapse of empires, the emergence of new ideologies, and the rise of new world powers. It also had a devastating impact on Europe and the world economy. In many ways, World War I was a turning point in history. It marked the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, and it set the stage for the conflicts and events that would shape the rest of the century. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, then become a patron where you can watch each video before it goes live without any ads. To learn more, check out the link in the description below. Thanks for watching.